Welcome to Great Events. My name is Abhijit Joshi. Before we proceed, everyone please turn on your cameras. Our today's session is on why leadership. Let me introduce our moderator for today, Raji Bandanapudi, the Club Growth Director for District 101. Raji, it's all you.
Thank you, Abhijit. The purpose of today's panel discussion is to discuss how Toastmasters leadership has transformed life of our panelists in their lives outside Toastmasters. It is often said, if your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and to become more, you're a leader. So are all the panelists here with us today who have inspired many people within their clubs, within their area, and we want to understand how did they do that and how it has transformed their lives. So let me get started with a quick round of introduction of our panelists. First on our panel, we have Anna Davenport, who has been a Toastmaster since the chartering of the new MAPS Toastmaster in June 2020 at Apple, where she currently works. As a manager at Apple, Anna had joined Toastmasters not only to improve her leadership skills, but also to inspire others on her team to do the same. Abhijit?
Thank you so much. Our next panelist is Ashutosh. Ashutosh is currently working as a software engineering manager at NVIDIA. He previously served as club president and area director and also as a division director. He was awarded the Division Director of the Year 2021-2022 and last year he completed his first Ironman. Welcome Ashutosh.
Our next panelist for today is Pawan Datla, Distinguished Toastmaster, past District Director, who has been with Toastmasters for more than a decade and has held several leadership positions along the way. And he has worked very closely with several Toastmasters and district committees. Outside the world of Toastmasters, he works as a principal engineer at NVIDIA. Welcome, Pawan.
Our next panelist is Sarah Tang. Sarah is currently a president of Women Lead Toastmasters. When she joined the Toastmasters for the first time, her mentor was Renee Yao. Sarah has gained inspiration from other Toastmasters leaders and confidence from taking on the leadership roles.
Welcome, Sarah. Next panelist on our panel today is Tam Lee, who has been with the True Talking Toastmasters since Feb of 2018. She's a current district leader as the Area B1 Director. She's a full-time real estate consultant, and she wants to share her favorite quote with all of us, which says, "A formal education will get you the job, but a personal development will get you fortune." Welcome, Tam.
Wendy Fan is a PhD and a chemist turned rocket scientist. She joined District 101 Toastmasters in 2019. Wendy served as the club VPE and an area director, and now the president of Startup Toastmasters Club. She was awarded Area Director of the Year 2021-2022. Wendy credits her transformation in communication and leadership to Pathway projects, as well as serving as a leader in Toastmasters. Welcome, Wendy Fan.
A big round of welcome to all our panelists. So let's start troubling our panelists right away without wasting any time. Let's shoot out the first question. Very obvious question. How did becoming a club officer of a club help you outside in your professional journey? Anna, would you like to take that first?
Sure. Thank you. I have been, one thing not introduced in my introduction was the officer roles that I have had. So I started out as a secretary, then became president for 2 terms, and now I'm vice president of education with my club. I took on secretary first because it was the first opportunity to take on an officer role. We had just chartered our club. I love to take notes. I'm quite good at taking notes. And I thought this would be a great way to use the skills I already have and also take on a leadership role within the club. How did it help me, specifically with secretary starting out? It helped me to be a more active listener. So both in clubs as well as in my job. And even outside of my job, I mean, we say in your life, and it's your life is your career, but it's also other things. So I think it's important to talk about other things outside of just our job too. Becoming president was much more of a leadership role, and that was a challenge to me, but also a great way to bring in those skills that I had learned by leading the club to my role as a manager, as leading my team, and also just kind of in my life, other places where I could take leadership, where I could take the lead and decide to do things for myself and do that in a way that encourages others to join in. I don't know if you want me to keep going, but
That's
No,
good. Oh,
yeah, go on, Abhijit.
Anna, you said you faced some challenges. What challenges you faced and how did you overcome them?
yeah, some of the main challenges were getting new members and also getting the members that we had to participate. It's something we are still challenged with now. I think we've gotten much better at it. We've found ways of getting people more interested. We also have had a challenge from moving from completely virtual to now a hybrid, virtual and in office. We are a corporate club at Apple, so some people are in conference rooms, some people are calling in. That has been a challenge as well. But how we've made it through is coming up with things like holding an open house, reaching out to diversity network associations, that's kind of our internal name for clubs, and trying to bring more people in through their interest in how Toastmasters can help them at Apple. That has allowed us to bring in more members. It's, I believe, brought new life into the club. A lot of the original people who started, other than me and a few others, are no longer participating in the club. So we have to continue to bring in the interest into the club for our new members too. And that's been a challenge, but I think we have been successful at meeting it.
Thank you so much, Anna. And also, I read that you are a manager at Apple.
Mm-hmm.
How has leadership in Toastmasters immediately affected your role as a manager at Apple?
Yeah, that's a great question. It has certainly continued to make me more confident if I can lead an entire club and be responsible for ensuring that everyone knows what their roles are. That translates really well to my own job, to leading my own team, making sure that everyone knows what their roles are. And also, another side of that is supporting and mentoring. And that's something I've also taken on, helping out newer members or older members. And in that way, you're reaching out when needed. You're not micromanaging, you're not telling someone what they need to do, but you're noticing that maybe someone's struggling or maybe there's a challenge and they need some help with prioritization, for example, and knowing when to step in. So those are some specific skills from Toastmasters I've been able to use with management, but there's plenty more.
Thank you so much, Anna. Raji.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Anna. I think a lot of us will resonate about the skills that you mentioned about how to mentor people, how to even broach those relationships. So I want Ashutosh also to share about, you have also taken up multiple roles starting at club level all the way till a division director. How has those transitions helped you to better your relationships at work?
That's an excellent question. So I think let me start by giving you a brief intro about myself before I took those roles. So I was very shy and I would hesitate to even email people to ask them stuff. So that was the level of shyness that I started with. And one fine day, Abhijit asked me to chair an area level contest. And that was my beginning of or foray into the entire experience of Toastmasters leadership, where like meeting other people, asking them to take on roles, asking them to volunteer for stuff, then ensuring that projects are done. Like, for example, running a contest, running an area's program for half a year, or running the entire division's program for a year. All of these are different levels of projects associated with different timing expectations and different deliverables at different milestones, and each of them have results that you're expecting. So all of these aspects translated directly into my day-to-day job as well. And I was working as a software engineer at that time. Slowly, I was able to use all of these skills to help me make the transition to a team lead and into a management role at my current job. So overall, all of these other aspects that are associated with Toastmasters leadership, like soft skills, table topics, uh, how do you get someone to work on things for which you are not paying them? That is a challenging aspect. And then how do you do it from a servant leadership perspective? Uh, and the last thing I think to add over here would be, how do you motivate people? Because you have to tap into the intrinsic motivation and not just like extrinsic motivation factors. So you have to consider what really motivates them to join Toastmasters, and then work with that in order to uh, have people work on projects, or work on delivering speeches, or work on coming into contests and delivering competition level speeches. So those were all of these different aspects that came very handy when I took on my job as a manager, or I transitioned into my role as a manager. Because even though here people are getting paid to do things for you, or for the company per se, it's you cannot just order people around. It's not a autocracy. So you have to balance everything and balance feelings, and also work with, again, intrinsic motivators, because at the end of the day, the pay statement, you don't look at it every day, but what you look at is how are your interactions on a day-to-day basis. So that has been the most valuable factor that I've derived from Toastmasters.
I think those
Thank
are really, really valuable to all of us, focusing on what motivates everybody, which is, like you said, the paycheck does motivate us to a certain extent at work, but that's not the only motivation. So getting those insights and thinking those aspects need to be considered is something I feel you mentioned you learned from Toastmasters. So thank you for sharing that. Abhijit, do you want to take on the next question?
Yes, I have one more follow-up question for Ashutosh. Ashutosh, how was the transition from an area director to a division director? Because both of them are two different roles. What changes you had to make for yourself to be a division director?
So as an area director, I felt a lot more in control, and I enjoyed the role a lot more because I was interacting with the clubs directly, and I was able to work with the club officers and suggest changes and see those changes happen. As a division director, you are one level removed, so the feedback loop is a lot longer, and sometimes you don't even get to see the results of your actions, and that becomes a little bit frustrating. And I can imagine that being the same for middle level management at companies. So that was one thing. The other part was, here it was even more about developing the people in my team more than developing clubs per se, because uh, that was the way you could have the most impact, by identifying what are the characteristics or what are the unique traits of every person on your team, and then working with them to make sure that their areas are on track, and you have to identify whether they are asking for help when they need help, or whether they are really good and you don't really have to touch whatever they're doing or redirect. So these are some of the things that you have to cultivate. As an area director, that didn't matter that much at that level, but as a division director, it matters a lot more because of this extended feedback cycle.
Seems like it's a real management experience being a division director.
Yeah.
Raji.
Absolutely. I think it's very easy to draw parallels between how we make progress at work as well as how we make progress at Toastmaster leadership levels. And who better to talk about it than Pawan, who has gone all the way till the trio, to say, how has the growth in Toastmasters leadership translated into growth at work? And how have you kept up with growth at both levels, both at Toastmasters and at work?
I think between Ashutosh and Anna, they pretty much covered everything. They had all the buzzwords, all the keywords, and I'm now trying to figure out what should I say. I think one thing, actually, before answering your question, one reason that anyone should even bother about considering themselves for signing up for any of these leadership roles, be it at the club level or the district level, is because you will have a lot of fun with it. You get to meet fun people like Declan Shalvey, and then and pretty much it's fun. That's one thing, and then second, the amount of learning that you get as a result. Now, to draw parallels between what I have seen in Toastmasters versus what I've seen at work. Now, I'm not into management at work. I'm in an individual contributor level, but of course, I lead projects, etc., etc. But I think the first and foremost of all the leadership years that I've spent in Toastmasters, the one thing that really stood out, or the one thing that really helped me, is to balance expectations when you're dealing with people from across varied backgrounds. And that's one sentence that always has stuck with me, because in Toastmasters, like Ashutosh was saying, once you're at the area level, you would get to work so closely with the club officers. And then once you get to a division level, and if you don't want to draw a parallel, say you are a team lead or something, or not just team lead, maybe you're a director at work, and then suddenly you are one level away, or you're at a slightly higher abstract level, and then you're trying to figure out what is going on. And at that point, I think the key is to balance the expectations. What should be the expectations from your immediate reportees versus what should be your expectation from the farthest in the food chain? I think that's one trait that has really helped me. Now, one other consideration that folks might have, that, okay, you have been a club officer, I have learned so much, I've been an area director and division director. Now, why should I take the time and make the commitment to go for even additional roles, like say club growth director or program quality director? What is in it for me to go and pursue these roles? Because make no mistake, I mean, these roles do help you in learning a great deal, but it also demands a good amount of time commitment. And I think oftentimes when people reach out to me and ask, should we do this role, or what will I gain out of it? And can I balance both my professional life as well as the Toastmasters life? I think one thing that I always point out is, be certain of what you're signing up for, and be certain of the time commitments that is required, both at your professional, on your professional side, as well as on a Toastmasters side. And how do you balance them out? Yes, there is a lot of learning. I mean, you get to gain a lot. And there are several things, for example, from a leadership perspective, right? How do you, I mean, I spoke about expectations, but then taking it a step further, how do you guide folks in your team, or how do you set the goals in your team? What is a realistic goal? What are practical and what is unreasonable goals, right? And then when you start setting those, and of course, there is work on your side also, because you need to define the measures for those goals, and you need to be able to clearly articulate your thought process and what should be the higher level guidance for your team. And if you're not doing that, and you're in the leadership role, that kind of is, I mean, for lack of better word, cheating yourself, because you're in that leadership role and you want to learn, you want to gain out of it. But then if you're not putting in that commitment, then you're not getting as much as what you should be really gaining out of that role. Now, the reason I'm explaining that so much is because the same thing, if you take it to your regular work, unless you have dedication and commitment, and unless you are clear in communication and articulating your thoughts about the project or the architecture or whatever you might be dealing with, or business plans or marketing strategies, etc., I think it gets harder and harder as you progress in your career. So the clarity of thought, the balance of expectations, and then how do you keep up with different sets of backgrounds that people come from, and how do you try to match to their leadership style. I'm not saying you should all change your leadership styles, but how do you adapt to the leadership styles of the people that you're dealing with? I think those are the three things that you learn as part of the Toastmasters leadership journey, and then which you can immediately draw a parallel or apply it at your work. I sort of gave a very long answer, but
thank you, Pawan.
sure.
No, that was very insightful.
One thing you said, it's like the amount of work you put in and you get out of it, it depends upon the amount of work you put in. So when
Right.
you went through the CGD role, the PQD or the DD, the trios, the top three,
Sure.
how did your personality change, or the view of the Toastmasters or your workplace changed?
Personality change from the view of Toastmasters. Wow. I think once you go into this roles which are at a district level, I think the perspective changes a lot, because when you're at an area director level or a division director level, even though it's a division director, even though you're dealing with multiple areas and multiple clubs and a team of area directors, I think you suddenly get a boost in perspective once you step into the top three roles in the district, because suddenly you're responsible for anything and everything that happens in the district, right? I mean, be it clubs not doing well, or starting a new club, or dealing with conferences or events, or some financial issues or administrative issues, etc., etc. So you suddenly suddenly put in a place where you have too many things going on, and it is natural for anyone to be a bit overwhelmed at the beginning, trying to figure out what is going on and to make sense of this whole new perspective that you have suddenly at a district level, where you have visibility of 150 clubs and then all the other things that come along with it. But I think once you have that holistic view, your perspective will definitely change. I mean, the first couple of months might be hard for you, trying to figure out, how do I guide myself, how do I navigate this new world? But it really changes your perspective, because suddenly you're getting inputs from, say, 40 or 50 people in your district executive team, and even from all the club officers, all the clubs. And then it really gives you a boost in terms of perspective and trying to make sense of that the problems that you see at one club may more or less might be happening at multiple other places. And then you get to set the priorities. You get to see, okay, what makes most sense, or what will have the maximum impact in terms of clubs or across the district. What will be the top impact or influence that I can make? And then you set your priorities accordingly. I mean, of course, no problem is worth less. I mean, you have a list of challenges. It all depends on how do you prioritize them, and how do you create a priority out of the list of priorities that you have. Because everything is, these days, everything is a priority. Now, how do you define a list of priorities, or how do you define a top priority from the list of priorities? However you want to word that out, but I think it conveys the meaning. And that's the same thing at work too. I mean, ever since we all have gone hybrid or remote, almost everything has become a priority, right? There are, for example, the project that I'm currently leading or working on, there are like 10 different priorities. Now, which one do you go after? Right. I think that's where your decision making or your holistic view or perspective matters a lot, because you are ultimately guiding not just yourself but the entire team into making the right decisions or right choices. Now, while doing so, you might make mistakes, and that is perfectly all right in the Toastmasters world, and that's the reason you're all in Toastmasters, to make those mistakes, to take those missteps, and then try and also an opportunity for you to see how you recover from them, or how do you get back and then move the ship in the right direction.
Thank you, Pawan. Thank you. It seems like we also become good at managing time with more responsibilities. Raji?
Yeah, managing time, priorities as well, because we are always dynamically dealing with changing priorities, even at work, where something suddenly becomes a priority, which was the bottom of our list a day before. So it could get a little overwhelming at Toastmasters as well, especially when you're stepping up to become a club officer. Because it's something that you have never done and you were just signed up to be a member to give speeches and get better at public speaking. So Sarah, what inspired you to actually step out? Was it the influence of your mentor? Was it something that you were self-inspired to step up to a club officer role at your club? What made you take that decision and how has it impacted you?
Abhijit told me to do it. Abhijit's been my mentor at Women Lead. He's one of the founders of Women Lead. And so, yeah, so he got me into Toastmasters because I'd been wanting to join it for a while. And when I found Abhijit had started this club with several others, including Renee, I joined, and Renee was the president, and then Priya, and we needed a new president. And at that time, I was one of the officer roles. I can't remember which. I think I was the VPPR. And Abhijit was like, Sarah, why don't you do it? And nobody else was stepping up. So I figured, why not? Sure. Because I'd been around since the club was founded, and so I knew it pretty well. And it seemed like if no one else is going to do it, sure, I will do it. I think I can do it.
Absolutely. Sometimes I think at work also we take up a role or a project where nobody is volunteering and your hand just goes up like, fine, I'll do it. So has this started to reflect in the way you work as well, Sarah, where you have taken up things out of your own initiative? Has this made you more proactive at work, you feel, or has there been an element of that as well? Do you see that reflect?
Definitely. So when Renee was president, I noticed she was really skilled. She did everything. If someone was not able to do something, she did it, and she was really good. And I saw that, and I was like, okay, I'm really impressed by her, but I know I cannot do that. I have no problem delegating to people. So when I told Abhijit, okay, I'll be president, but I need to find some really, really good officers so I don't have to do all that work. So same thing at work. I feel like my boss is quite similar to Renee, where she is a really skilled woman. She is used to running the whole business herself. I'm an acupuncturist, and I'm working under one of my teachers. So my teacher, she is used to running her business on her own. But now that she's taken on me and a couple of other students to work with her, suddenly, she's trying to manage a team. And I see that she's trying to do everything herself. But first off, it's not really possible. You're going to burn out, even if she's super, super skilled. So I see where I can fit in to the team. I can see where my skills would be helpful. So I just put myself in that position now. And it works out really well, especially in the small group setting where it's the roles are not like super defined. So I kind of just found my way into whatever niche needs to be filled. That's where I put myself now.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I think you made two very, very valid points, which I think often we overlook, which is the art of delegation. Since we want things to get done, all of us are like, oh, let's just get it done. I don't care if nobody else is doing. And also identifying the niche for ourselves, that how do we bring back value to our team or value to anything that we are a part of. So thank you for sharing that. Abhijit, do you want to take on the next question?
Yes, definitely. Also, please guests, let us know what questions you have and email message directly to Raji so that we can ask those questions at the end. Tam, my next question is for you. Tam, you have been an officer and an area director. How has that impacted your business, the way you deal with your clients?
Thank you for your question, Abhijit. I would credit my success in my business to Toastmasters. And why do I say that? My background is actually an engineer. I got major, my major was in computer science and applied math. I worked for 10 years as an engineer. And when I switched to real estate, that is when I actually joined Toastmaster. So the transition is 180 degree. It took me a lot of thinking to actually make that change. And I know that, as I shared with you from the beginning, my formal education got me a job. And when I changed into real estate, that actually, I have to say, it's the improvement that I make on myself is where that growth is for my life. And let me show you exactly how Toastmaster helped me. Say you got a new member, like some prospective member reach out to you, and you know new member is the bloodline of your club. Just like in real estate, new clients are bloodline of my business. The first thing I do is reach out to that person right away. And that is how my club grew. When they told me that, they emailed a lot of other clubs, and I was the first one responded to them. And then that helped them go to my club, join the meeting, and we drill them in, right? We get them into the club, see what the club is about. And then if they don't show up, I have to follow up with them. That is the skill that in my business I have to do. I have to constantly checking out to them, ask them, do you have time to come? Will you be able to make it this Wednesday at 7 p.m.? And that exactly the same thing that I'm doing in my business. You can see that a lot of functionary in Toastmaster as a club officer translate into the business, that whether you're an engineer or whatever at your job that you do, take the responsibility as a club officer, and you can translate that to your job. And I credit my success in my business to Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Tam. I think a couple of things you said that really resonated with me. The one thing you said was new members are a bloodline for the club. I think that I have never heard that. So the way you put it, and I feel there is another career waiting for you, becoming an inspirational speaker. So, Raji.
Yeah, maybe one more turn in Tam's career then, looks like it. Okay, let's ask this question to Wendy, where I see a lot of interesting job description that she has. She was a chemist and rocket scientist, and often people in sciences often feel that they don't really need leadership skills because they're good at a particular thing and they continue to do so, and they don't really need to talk about it. But that obviously is not true. Coming from such an academic background, how has this whole experience of putting your out there as a leader, as a Toastmaster, helped you still get better at your technical side and progress in your career? How would you link the two?
Thank you, Raj. That's such an excellent question. I think you got to ask the right person right here, because growing up, I was a bookworm. My parents emphasized, education classes, you have to excel. So I did not go out, play with people or any people interactions. I excelled in school and I enjoy it because dealing with science is so easy, because you don't need to talk, right? You just need to study and understand it. You will behave very well. So for a very long time, I was kind of successful because I got really good at it because I was. And people often compliment me, oh, you really played your strength very well. But at some point, when you got really good in the technical field, you realize I could do much more. But you cannot go alone anymore. And I'm living in a world, I'm working with people around me. If it's just science, I would be fine. And seeing that limitation, it really hurts because it's not just my personal loss, it's the field. I could do so much more and help a very challenging field, and I couldn't because my ability to deal with people, when people understand me, I was able to work well. But when people I need to motivate, I was very blunt and I was not patient. So it became my mission. I avoided it for a long time, communication, but it finally became my mission. I walked into Toastmasters Club 3 years ago. I said, I'm going to try. I don't know. But that started. But becoming officer was a completely different game. Otherwise, I would just go home and probably would disengaged and give up. But because becoming officer, I have to make sure I'm a very responsible person. If you put responsibility on me, I want to do it. And I was, my mentor was also area director, Sharon Chen. She persuaded me to become the vice president of education. And you guys know that's a role, day to day, week to week, you have to do all these things. And that actually started to change me. I cannot. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely, Vinny, it did. Thank you for sharing that with us. I do see all of us have found value for our own selves, something that was not naturally us before we took on these roles and challenged ourselves out there. So I think the lesson that I'm taking away from all of you is moving out of your comfort zone and trying out something new, even though you know nothing about it. So thank you all for sharing that.
If there are any questions from the audience, please put it in the chat. Wendy, I have a follow-up question for you. You were an officer and then you became an area director. You put in the hard work. What did you gain out of being an area director?
Yeah, great question. I think I never mean to go do area director again, but Shamala called me. I said, okay. Because it's a middle manager, I'm the one who's in control. I want to do everything, the right way. And being a middle manager, I don't have any control. So that was not my intention. But I said, yes. Part of the reason is after I did the VP, I wrote a pathway speech, about my experience. I distilled it into wisdom. I realized, wow, it's amazing. I could learn so much. So I said yes. I think now I know different Toastmasters has all these magic roles. Each role has a give you different set of challenges, different skills. And when you say yes to the challenge, you stick with it and you go through, you learn it. Because being area director, of course, your database becomes bigger, you meet more people, you're thrust into people interactions. Of course, as a scientist, I learn, right? These are experiments. And I don't know how much detail you want me go into. Your view is different, perspective is different, the skill is different. And I learned as area director, I think one tip is I saw people ask art of influence. I'm still beginning at that, but one thing I learned is when you are passionate about it, when you are dedicated and you keep making the message, showing a leader, what you should do, people actually mirror your energy. They may not respond right away. It actually works on them. And yeah. So
Thank you
keep
so
doing
much. Thank you so much, Wendy. Yeah, we do have a question in the chat, which is asking if anybody had the opportunity to learn the art of influence through Toastmasters, and if there is a specific example that they can share with all of us. Any of our panelists wanting to take this question? Sure, Anna.
Yeah, I can speak to that, and others can feel free to jump in too. Influence, I think, is more like being a role model, being a leader. In being a leader, we are a role model. So for me, I connected with, I think it was Sarah, talking about how the president in her club kind of did everything, and when things weren't done, they would do them. That is also me, which I know is you should also delegate, but that does give you a chance to give a good role model for others. If I'm jumping in and I'm doing a speech and I'm doing the contest and I'm helping out and mentoring, then hopefully that influences others to do that too. And they see that it makes a difference and that it's helping me. So that's where I feel like the art of influence has been reflected within our club, is being a role model. And that has worked. I've seen that work well.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, I think a lot of these officer roles intrinsically make us responsible people, which automatically start to become role models for other people to aspire that, hey, even I want to become like this person or try this out because I'm enjoying what I'm seeing this person do. So thank you for sharing that. We do have the next question in the chat, which is about competing in international speech contest. What is your opinion on it? Do you believe that competing in the contest accelerates your level of leadership and influence? Any of the panelists wanting to take a jab at this? I think Ashutosh is inclined to answer.
Yeah, I can take that question because my lifelong dream has been to compete in the international speech contest. But I've been held back by all the district roles I was taking on. The main thing that I think you can gain from competing in there is more on the influence side than the leadership side. On the leadership side, I think you would still improve in your communication skills quite a bit because you're on the competing side. Now, if you're saying that you want to organize international speech contests, then yes, that would be a much higher boost in your leadership capabilities as well. In terms of influence, in order to be really successful at international speech contests, you have to practice your speech multiple times. And the really successful speakers who go and win the championship, they go and deliver their speeches to 300 to 500 different clubs. So you can imagine that if you really want to go to that level, then you would have a much wider influence, and you would also in that act, you would influence others around you and also all the other clubs that you're touching as you go. So that way you would build up on your influence skills too.
Thank you, Ashutosh. I think that is an interesting insight. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else with any quick insights on influence-based leadership and influencing people?
If I may, Raji.
Sure, Declan, go ahead.
I joined Toastmasters 9 years ago to be a better communicator. I'd been working in industry and as a leader for 30 years. And I said to myself, what possibly can I learn in this volunteer organization? I know everything about leadership. And then I became an area director. Now, in the real world, you have position power based on the role you play in the organization. In Toastmasters, you have position, but you don't have power. And while that area director role did for me, it refreshed my influence leadership approach. And what I mean by that is it forced me to collaborate a little bit more and listen to others a little bit more than I would have otherwise done. And in that, it helped me behave more like a servant-based leader rather than a power-based leader. And what is now a fact is that those skills have complemented what it took me 30 years to learn, and they have augmented what I do today. So I can't emphasize enough the value of the leadership role in Toastmasters, particularly actually around developing your influence skills. Even if in your job, you may have to influence an adjacent department. And how do you go about that? And you have to collaborate. You have to understand what they're trying to achieve. You have to listen more carefully. Wonderful stuff. Practice it in Toastmasters. It makes it easier in the real world. No, I still won't listen to Abhijit, by the way, despite
there are always exceptions, right, Declan? So
there are exceptions.
I can. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Wendy.
Oh, I thought about that quickly. I think one way actually in life also at work, I think the Toastmaster has frameworks, for example, evaluation. You first say, I agree. I think I appreciate you did this, but here's, something, and because of this, and we need to do this. And so I think these kind of skills, the frameworks that really applies everywhere in life, I think that actually motivates people instead of before I would come on say, you did crap things, So I think,
developing that empathetic approach with the others that, hey, I understand where you're coming from, but got it. Pawan, did you want to quickly add to that before we move on to our last question for today?
I actually want to narrate an experience. I need a minute or so, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Two things. Actually, when Declan was area director, I was a district director. So thank you, Declan, for doing an awesome job. And since we're talking about area director and the art of influence, so I was an area director in 2013, 2014, and then I had a club which was not meeting. And after a couple of months, I was able to make contact with one member of the club. And for the first few months, I was actually cursing myself of having this club in my area because it has one member, it's not meeting at all, and more or less it's going to close. And then I'm going to lose a club, I have to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. I should have probably picked a different area, blah, blah, blah. And then I still made a contact with that one person. By the way, that person's name is Borhan Oskarucci. I still remember his name. I met with him, and he was enthusiastic. He wanted to revive the club, and I said, okay, I'm more than happy to help you, and let's see where this goes. And then week after week, we were always having our meetings, irrespective of whether we had 2 people in the room or 3 people in the room. But slowly, we started doing PR within the company and also outside of it, and we made an open club. And long story short, at the end of the term, we had, I think, about 10 people with all the 7 officers elected, etc. Now, during the entire journey, I was trying my best to help the person and the club, and I was trying to show up whenever I can and try to encourage them and try to help them in any which way. And on the last day of when my term has ended, I just went to thank him and then saying that my area director term is done and this will be a new area director. And then he said, okay, let me walk you to your car. And I said, well, thank you so much for being so patient and being consistent and dedicating your time and commitment and not giving up. And then he said, well, if you didn't show up or if you didn't support me, I think I would have given up a lot earlier. So I think that goes on to say that, I thought that I was not sure if I was influencing that person or the club. I just tried going there and trying to see to revive the club. But then he saw it in a very different fashion. I mean, he said if I wasn't helping him or encouraging him or showing up every other week or every week, he would have given up. So I think you automatically started having that influence. And I think the beauty of the area director role is you might not realize what you are actually gaining when you are actually at it. But once you finish the role and once you look back at any of these leadership roles, you will appreciate what you have contributed and actually what you have gained in the process. I think that was my eye-opening experience when I was an area director, and believe it or not, after that I stepped up to be a division director. But until then, I was not really convinced that I should continue for the leadership roles.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Pawan. I think that summarizes a lot of our journey as well, where every time we step up into a meeting, just as a club member or a club officer, or even as a district leader, there are people looking up to us. It may not be hundreds of people or thousands of people, but even if we are able to influence 1 or 2 lives, I think it still matters. So that's why it definitely takes time. It definitely takes a lot of self-motivation to stand up, but it definitely makes a difference as well. I did see Tam had answered the question about having boundaries, about how you manage work-life balance, as well as work at Toastmasters as well. I think that's a very key insight. In the lieu of time, like we were discussing, I would want to go around the panel to quickly have a quick 30-second takeaway for anybody watching this recording to what should be their one takeaway to say how Toastmaster leadership has transformed your life outside it, more focused on the career aspect if possible, and your personal life as well. So let's start in alphabetical order. Anna, would you like to take this first and summarize it in a quick 30-second blurb?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Reggie. Being a leader in Toastmasters, starting out by joining Toastmasters, first of all, and understanding that it's something that could help me, and then taking that next step to actually become an officer, starting as a secretary and then taking on president and vice president of education. All of those things have helped me within my work life and also within my personal life. I already was a manager before I started Toastmasters. I already have been really interested in leadership, leading teams, leading clubs that I've put on. But by joining Toastmasters, as other panelists have said, it gives you a framework, it gives you the skills, it gives you something that you can rely on and then come back to when you're not in Toastmasters. And those same skills that you learn as a Toastmaster with helping to be more confident with public speaking and presenting, better communication, and improved listening, those same skills will also help you to be a better leader. So I really see it as a cycle where having the interest in being a leader and taking on leadership roles and responsibilities, getting that experience within Toastmasters and then applying that to outside of Toastmasters, both with work and with life, has made a measurable difference for me. And I will continue to grow as a leader. I was asked to be an area director last year. I had to turn it down, but I am very inspired by you. I hope I'm inspiring others, but I'm also very inspired by the other panelists and their own experiences. So I hope that I can take that with me and you can all take it with you to try to step up and be a leader in Toastmasters and in your life.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you so much for sharing that. Tam, you had mentioned you had to drop off at 7. Did you want to go ahead and give your 30-second blurb?
Thank you. Yes, I do. And I know that in the audience, I know that someone I want to mention is Angel. Angel is really good with Instagram and Facebook, and those things can help you with for your club. I would encourage you to take on a position as a VP Public Relations. That will help you in your business as well, because you are already good with what you're doing. So start with something that you like to do and contribute that to your club, and you will see more things will come back to you.
Thank you so much, Tam. Sarah, did you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I was just thinking about the questions that were answered, and I think in terms of influencing people, when you're a leader, you get the opportunity when you're delegating to notice people's strengths and to tell them what they're good at and ask them to take on some kind of responsibility, which is a way of, like what Abhijit did to me, where he encouraged me to be president. It's a way of influencing people. And I was also thinking about the international speech contest, and if that accelerates your level of leadership and influence. I don't think directly it does, but I do think that participating in the speech contest makes you a lot more comfortable being in front of people, which is something you have to do when you're a leader. So that's my 2 cents, and there you go.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah. Ashutosh, did you want to go next?
Sure. So for people who don't have avenues to try leadership skills, or people who are leadership curious per se, Toastmasters gives you a fantastic avenue to try it out and see if it is a good fit, and if it's something that is giving you value and allowing you to magnify your value and reach to multiply your impact across a lot of different people. So it is a great value proposition, and the main thing over here is that you are not going to be penalized for any mistakes that you make, and you can learn from your mistakes and get better at it, and you can come back and do it again. So those are the things that I really value about Toastmasters leadership per se.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh, for sharing that. Yes, Toastmasters is an absolutely safe place even for leadership, not just for our speeches. Wendy, did you want to share your 30-second blurb?
Yes, I was the most impossible leader I actually started with, but I testify that I really think the serving as a leader, it will anchor you and engage you further, because ultimately it's you want to become a better speaker and communicator. And my experience is that by embracing the challenge that comes from whatever role you have, by being thrusted into that people interaction, like Declan referred, in a voluntary environment, you have no authority, and it forces you to be patient, to be more reflective. And in that process, it really makes you a better person and more effective. And benefit to work, that's like cherry on the cake. It makes me inner to be a better person, and everything else happier, and everything else will come naturally. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
last but not the
Declan.
least,
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to, Pawan.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think 3 things. One is, how do you influence and motivate people when no formal authority exists? And how do you change or adapt your leadership style to suit the needs of your fellow members or your fellow colleagues at work? And then the third one is, how do you create, or how do you prioritize from a list of priorities that you have, and how do you guide the ship in the right direction? I think these 3 things, no matter which leadership role you take up, be it a club officer or an area director or any of the roles at the district level, I think you'll always stand to gain these, at least these leadership traits, which can directly translate to either your professional life or your personal life.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Pawan. Declan, did you want to add something to what our panelists just said?
I think Abhijit was trying to embarrass me, so let's give him one last shot at it, shall we?
So 30 seconds, Declan, to summarize.
Well, actually, Pavan has summarized for me the benefits, the influencing skills, and what you have to do to be able to do that, and then to become a leader that serves others. Key skill. You have to apply multiple leadership skills, because leadership, the right leadership style is situational. It depends what you find yourself faced with. And, you know, one of the things that has motivated me is that our job as leaders is to help every single individual member in our clubs achieve whatever they came to Toastmasters to achieve. And the notion that you can help somebody achieve what they want to achieve with your leadership, with your facilitation, it's a gift, actually. And I'll say one last thing. When I finished that year of service, and Pavan was the director, and frankly, Pavan, you did a great job with the area directors across the board in D101. Anytime we can talk about that. But what the inspiration that I got afterwards was that I needed to figure out, how can I give back to people? How can I serve people? And it turned out the better way for me to do it was to develop programs, workshops, share whatever I had learned the hard way, and go back to the organization. And some of that is around leadership, and some of that was around communication. So phenomenal opportunities and benefits to be had.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. A big round of applause to all our panelists for actually taking out time and talking about their journeys, because it's not always easy to talk about the before version of ourselves before we stepped out of the comfort zone. What were our insecurities? What were our drawbacks? And then, but all of you were so willing to share. So thank you so much for that. I think we can stop the recording right now.